Jovan Buha! Buha!
All right, so overarching thoughts on tonight's game is that like it just has not mattered who the Lakers have been without during this stretch. I've talked about it several times, but first, they have the pre-trade starting group with AD and Max, and they're relatively healthy. They get Vando back in late January. Then AD goes down around that stretch, and he's out until he ultimately gets traded. Then they're without AD and Max and Luka, who's still out. And then they eventually get Luka back, and then he also misses a game. But like, they've had guys in and out of the lineup. Now they're without Austin and Rui, who are their third and fourth best scorers. And really, if you look at the way that the Lakers offense has functioned, it has really funneled through LeBron, Luka, Austin, and Rui. Most nights, they're only having 3 to 4 guys in double figures, with it primarily being those 4 guys. And so I was interested how tonight would go in terms of the offense. And as we know, the offense has been a bit hit or miss lately. Luka has been a bit up and down by his standards, and guys have struggled to make shots. And it's just kind of been like the defense has been at an incredible level, and it continued tonight. 7th straight game, all coming out of the All-Star break, with the Lakers allowing 102 or fewer points. But I was just curious to see how the offense would look, and it largely was fine. That was one of the most encouraging things, if not the most encouraging thing tonight for me, outside of obviously the result of LA being the number 2 seed, is that they didn't really miss a beat. It was just a bit more Luka, a bit more LeBron. Gabe had was helping bring the ball up a little bit more and initiating offense, but DFS stepped up, especially in that first quarter, first half. Dalton had 19 points off the bench, his most points in a game since January 28th, that Philly game. That's the game that AD got hurt in. So Dalton has his January 28th. So his most points in a game in over a month. And it just feels like no matter what happens right now, like the Lakers find a way to get it done, find a way to get a win, no matter how ugly or pretty it is on a given night. So I think they just deserve a lot of credit for the resiliency and the connectivity and just the togetherness that this group has really formed over the past month and a half. And we're going on 7 weeks of this, basically. And again, it hasn't really mattered. Like there are some through lines. I think JJ and his game plans and the coaching staff, I think LeBron and Austin before he went down, and Rui and like DFS, and there have been some things that have been relatively consistent over this stretch. But despite guys being in and out of the lineup, despite certain opponents calling for certain matchups or certain rotation or lineup decisions, like the Lakers have just kept rolling. And at this point, now that they are the 2 seed in the West, like they're the 2 seed by mere percentage points. So it certainly can fluctuate, and they're 1 loss away from dropping to potentially like the 4 or 5 seed with how jumbled the top of the West is right now. But I think this just shows like this group. I mean, if they could get the 2 seed, like they're in a really good position to potentially make the conference finals. And once you're in the top 4 in the conference finals, like anything's possible at that point. So I just think they've been playing really, really good basketball. I know that's not breaking news, but they just continue to find ways. And even tonight, they faced a little bit of adversity where LeBron had an off shooting night, 6 of 17 from the floor. Luka kind of cooled down after a big first quarter, and it didn't they held the Clippers scoreless over the final, I want to say it was final 7 minutes of the second quarter, 7.5. And then they ultimately were able to get enough stops and make some big plays on the stretch. Like there was that one play that JJ referenced after the game where Lakers are up 93-88. They had just called timeout, and LeBron misses a shot. I think it was a 2. I think it was a long 2. Then Vando gets the offensive rebound. Then he misses a floater. Then Trey Jemison gets the offensive rebound. Then he misses a 3. Then Vando gets another offensive rebound. Then Trey sets in a pin and flare for LeBron, and he finally gets a three. But that was 3 offensive rebounds on the same possession, and just the Lakers' effort and fight. And JJ's talked about effort offense, and it kind of just being like, sure, maybe we don't have the requisite level of shooting or playmaking or scoring right now. But if you are running hard, if you are cutting hard, if you're screening hard, if you're getting out in transition, like the ball is going to find you and good things are going to happen. And I think we saw a lot of that tonight. So I think another good win. The Clippers had Norm Powell back for a little bit before he ultimately left the game. But I mean, Kawhi, I thought was really good tonight. Kawhi looked much more like the normal version of Kawhi or the previous version of Kawhi, and didn't matter. Vando and DFS did a solid job against him, against James Harden, and the Lakers continue to win. So the Lakers are in a really good spot right now, 38-21, 17 games above 500. Stat of the night to me is going to be, there's a couple. So one is 18 3-pointers made, which is tied for the third most by the Lakers this season. Their season high is 20. And so I think the 3-point shooting, you had DFS hit a couple. LeBron hit that one in the fourth. Gabe hit 3. Luka hit 5, which was his Laker high. Shake hit a couple, and Dalton hit 5 off the bench. So I think that the shooting tonight, with the shots that Luka and LeBron can create, I think you saw the a certain level of shooting tonight. And then the other one's going to just be LeBron finishing with 17 points, because he entered the game with being 18 points away from reaching 50,000 career points between the regular season and the playoffs. And JJ kind of like what was skittish about talking about it pregame. He got asked about it, and he's like, can I just answer this after the game once LeBron does it? Like, I don't want to talk about this before he actually goes out there and does it. So it was kind of interesting that like JJ didn't really want to talk about it, and that it ultimately didn't end up happening. So LeBron is now 1 point away from 50,000 career points between the regular season and the playoffs. He will get it most likely in the opening minutes of the Lakers game against the Pelicans on Tuesday. But that to me was just of note of like, it's rare for LeBron to not score 18 points in a game. And of course, tonight of all nights, he goes 6 for 17, 1 for 6, and just doesn't get there. And then takeaway number 1 for me is going to be Luka continues to look more comfortable. I thought that this was his second best offensive performance as a Laker behind the Denver game. And so I mentioned he hit 5 threes, which was his most as a Laker. He had 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 9 assists. And actually, before I continue with the Luka part, just wanted to shout out, well, Luka with his stat line. LeBron had 17 and 9. This is the notable performers section, the new section I added in. Dalton with 19 off the bench, again, highest point total since January 28th. And then DFS also had 11. Vando, 8 points, 9 rebounds, 5 offensive rebounds, 2 blocks. Huge performance from Vando. So wanted to shout out a few of those guys. But back to Luka. I thought Luka, like, he loves playing against the Clippers, and I've made this point before, but like, by trading for Luka, the Lakers inherited some beefs across the NBA. And they already have some beef with the Clippers, but now they have more beef with the Clippers because Luka loves torturing the Clippers. And he hit 3 threes to open the game. And he was chirping with some assistant coach, someone on the Clippers bench. And that was just fueling him. And you really see with Luka, like, once he starts getting into that, you don't want to be on the other side of that if you're an opponent. But I thought, so Lakers finish plus 16 in his 36 minutes, which was the second best mark among the starters. Of course, DFS, what was a plus? Lakers were plus 24 in DFS's 37 minutes, just a plus minus monster. But Luka, to me, this was like, did have 6 turnovers. That's really the only thing you could knock. But I thought even like defensively, he was a bit more aggressive and active, like on the ball. Like I think off the ball, had a couple of steals like that. That's just how he is in terms of playing passing lanes. But I thought his on-ball defense was a little bit better tonight. But then the 6 rebounds, finding LeBron in transition with those cross-court, passes and just 9 assists, 29 points. Like, I mean, that's like a routine night for Luka. But I thought comparing it to like the rest of his performances as a Laker, this to me was like the second best offensive performance and probably like the time he's looked closest to himself outside of the Denver game. So I thought this was a big step in the right direction. And this is a really good Clippers defense. I don't know where they rank currently in the NBA defensively, but JJ said they're a top 5 defense. So I'll take him at that. They have Kawhi and Chris Dunn and Batum and Coffee and like Zubats as a rim protector. So like they have a bunch of long rangy wings and a good big man, rim protector. So this is a team that like on paper should give Luka a little bit of problems, but didn't matter tonight. So I think Luka continues to look more like himself. And I've continued to say, like, just give him some time, preach patience, and he's going to be fine. It's Luka Doncic. Like, don't overthink it. And I think he's starting to look more like himself. I do think one element here with the turnovers, and LeBron also had 8 turnovers. I think for both guys, like partly playing with some lineups that they hadn't played before, I think there's naturally going to be some spacing issues and timing issues. And just like there was a play where I think it was Jemison and Vando both kind of like cut. One of them was a screener, one of them was a cutter. They both kind of cut into each other, and Luka threw the lob in their general vicinity, and like neither one got up for it. And it was kind of like, yeah, neither one of those guys is like a lob threat. And that's where I think like part of it is just more reps and experience together, but also part of it is like some of the lineups that like those lineups have been good defensively, but Luka trying to find like Vando or Trey for a lob is not really, I think, a sustainable part of the Lakers offense, like moving forward. So I think that's just one of those things where they've had to play some funky lineups recently with the injuries, but ultimately it hasn't mattered. Second takeaway for me is Dalton Knecht, like really stepped up off the bench tonight and was the Lakers' second leading scorer, actually outscored LeBron. But on a night where, again, I talked about double figure scoring and like LA not necessarily having a consistent source of offense, Dalton was huge tonight with the 5 threes and 7 of 10 shooting overall, had 4 rebounds. I thought he had a couple of big rebounds in the fourth quarter, like in traffic. And you saw like he does have that vertical ability. And he came down with a couple of big rebounds, also had a couple steals. I thought the defense was better tonight than it has been typically. And like you've seen some flashes from him recently in terms of defensive progress. So that is something that teams are still continuing to target him and try to put him in as many actions as possible. But I thought tonight what was much better for Dalton. And then I think like, so JJ talked about it after the game that this has been a process, obviously, with Dalton and him looking more like himself post trade rescinded. And JJ even admitted like he didn't explicitly say that Dalton has lost his confidence, but he says we've all been there. Your confidence can wane in certain situations, and like the way to get it back is to play well. And he felt like the last couple of games against the Clippers have brought back Dalton's confidence. So I think the like what we could take from that was just that I think JJ was implying like Dalton has lost his confidence a little bit recently. And I thought tonight he looked far more comfortable, far more like the Dalton from earlier in the season. And especially with Austin and Rui out for Austin's day to day, Rui's out at least until the weekend. Like they're going to need Dalton to shoot and score and provide offense, especially if Gabe tonight, 9 points, 3 of 10 shooting. His shot's been off lately. You're not getting much offensively from Vando, Jemison, or Milton. And then DFS is very much a finisher and a guy who needs to have offense generated for him. And he had some uncharacteristic misses. Luka was kind of joking about DFS missing that one layup that he set up for him that would have got him 10 assists. But I think like looking at the current personnel, like I think the one absence I haven't even mentioned yet is Jordan Goodwin. And I think right now he's been like the Lakers' 8th or 9th best player, and not having him is a big loss as well, even for the offensive end. He's a connecting piece as basically like a big man in like a shooting guard's body, and the way that he operates as a screener and a short roll playmaker, and like the offensive rebounding, the cutting. I think he's been a big part of the Lakers' recent success as well. So not having him, as well as Austin, as well as Rui, you're missing a certain level of shooting, shot creation, cutting, offensive rebounding. Like there's a lot that the Lakers are missing with those three guys being out. And I think Dalton tonight really stepped up, and it wasn't quite reflected in terms of like plus minus. Like the Lakers were minus 14 in his 25 minutes. But part of that was he played sub with Shake, who Shake continues to be the opposite of a plus minus monster. He's a plus minus monster in a negative way. Lakers were minus 16 in Shake's 8 minutes. It's just like he goes out there and they get destroyed. But the bench minutes were a little shaky in terms of like actual on-court impact by like plus minus standards. But I don't think they win this game without Dalton Knecht scoring the way that he did, hitting the shots that he did. And again, I know it wasn't necessarily reflected by the plus minus, but I think this is one of those scenarios where like the Lakers just needed some points and some shots, and Dalton provided that. And again, a couple steals, some big rebounds. Like I thought overall he made a solid impact tonight. And then takeaway number 3 for me is going to be just the defense again. Like it's really incredible the way that the Lakers are defending right now, where it's almost like they're switching a lot, right? But anytime someone targets one of their weaker defenders or gets a certain advantageous switch, they are sending a second guy over, either straight up doubling or shading over aggressively, and then everybody shifts. And it's almost like an amoeba or some type of like organism right now defensively, where I think they're doing such a great job of especially the 2 weak side guys, whoever they are, for the most part, are like reading the exact spots to be in terms of it's often like 2v3 on the weak side, and they are just playing it perfectly in terms of being able to step into passing lanes and take away some of those weak side skip passes, and then also preventing cuts, preventing offensive rebounds. And I just think that the Lakers are in such a zone right now defensively that even when teams like to hold the Clippers 7.5 for scoreless for 7.5 minutes, some of it was just Clippers shot making or lack thereof. But you got to give the Lakers a lot of credit for that. They held the Clippers to 15 points total in that second quarter. And if you think about that, the flip side was the Clippers started the quarter off well against the Lakers bench. It went on a bit of a run there, and the Lakers then just shut them down for the rest of the quarter. So again, 7 straight games allowing 102 points or fewer. That's just incredible in 2025, when I've said it countless times, like you walk into 110 points a night just by showing up, basically, if you are like a competent team, if you're not the Wizards or one of the worst teams in the league. So I think that the Lakers have just turned into a defensive juggernaut. I'm going to assume they remain the best defense in the league over this 22 game stretch. And it really, like, there's no end in sight. Like they're playing the Pelicans on Tuesday, then 2 tough games, Knicks Thursday, Celtics on Saturday. But this defense is just humming right now. And you could even argue, like, by starting DFS and Gabe, like, obviously from a depth perspective, they're taking a hit. From an offensive perspective, they're taking a significant hit, not having Austin and Rui, and even not having Goodwin. But defensively, like you could argue, going from Rui and Austin to DFS and Gabe is even a defensive upgrade. And having this lineup, Jackson only played 26 minutes, but the other 4 starters all playing 30 plus minutes. Like they are shifting even more toward the defensive end here. And we'll see if Austin's able to go on Tuesday or if he's able to return on Thursday or what his status is in the short term. And then Rui's going to miss at least the next couple games, if not a few more, total. So has not mattered. Like the Lakers just continue to win. They continue to play well. And it's impressive, but the defense has been tonight. 8 steals and 6 blocks, 14 stocks is like low for them. It was not a great defensive performance by like their standards, but they held the Clippers to 102 points, 43.7% shooting, and they also kept them off the offensive glass. Only 9 offensive rebounds. Right, I think they had 13, 15 last game, something like that. So just another really impressive defensive performance for LA. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. As I mentioned, I'm going to be going about an hour because of I'm struggling. I'm not. Yeah. All right. First one from Jan. Is LeBron okay? His fall after the block is so scary. LeBron did not speak to the media post game. I'm going to. Sometimes he'll take a night off, so I'm going to assume it's more likely that, but don't have a health update on LeBron. I'm going to assume he's okay, but yeah, that was like doing the splits and then Kawhi falling into him. But that I'm glad you brought that up. That was a huge block from LeBron, and that prevented, like, it would have been a 3-point game with a little with like just under 30 seconds left. So we know he's the chase down block king, and that was a huge play. Blur asked again. So I did leave early in post game, so I wasn't able to monitor LeBron, but I know that he didn't talk. So I've already listened and transcribed all of JJ's post game. So he didn't mention anything about LeBron. So I think he's okay, but I don't have that much insight right now. They see me trolling. They can't win. Thank you for the super chat, Braun, and his zero sugar sidekick getting it done. Is that a Luka reference that I guess is maybe going over my head here? Yeah, I mean, Luka, like I think, and it's not to compare them necessarily, but like I think LeBron's obviously been largely the more impactful player over the last few games or so, and tonight it was Luka. It was the opposite. So I think LeBron just had an off shooting night, but he'll be fine. He will get his layup or dunk or whatever early in the next game and get his 50,000 plus points. BLC, thank you for the super chat. Good to see you, Jovan. No doubt we're now the favorites to win the title. I'm still tentatively putting the Lakers at number 4, but I think their gap between them and number 5, who I'd probably put Denver there, is growing. And I think they are starting to close that gap with Cleveland and Boston and OKC. If you want to put them as the favorites, you can. I just think we have a body of work with those other teams that's a bit like they have more continuity. They've been doing it for a bit longer this season in terms of playing at a high level. I think for the Lakers, it's obviously been since like mid-January, and they'd had some stretches before then, but like basically at this level, it's been since January 15th on. So I'm not saying they can't get to favorite status. I'm not like, I think I'll say, I don't think they're going to be ever considered the favorites by the national media until it's like they're up like 3-1 in a series or something. Like I think they're gonna like Boston's the defending champs. OKC's having a dominant season. Cleveland's like right there, right behind them in terms of net rating and record. That they actually have a better record. So like I think those 3 are going to be considered the inner circle. But I think the Lakers are not only knocking on that door, but like kicking that door down and putting themselves in that mix right now, which is all you can ask for is to be in that inner circle. And then it just comes down to health and matchups. And, we got to see how the Lakers can move forward, but figure out kind of the Austin Rui situation. BLC, Luka hearts the Clips. Lakers in 4-5 first round versus LAC. It's a good. Thank you for the super chat again. It's a good question or thought. I would say I'd probably pick the Lakers in 6, but I certainly would pick them ahead of the Clippers. Maybe 5. I really have to kind of think about it, break it down more. Wilson, thank you for the super sticker. Darren Firm 985. JJ said that he was not much worried about seeding, that he just wants to make the playoffs. Would you agree that we at least want to finish 3rd? Yeah, I mean, he was asked about the seeding, and I think the point that he made was he does not want to be a play-in team. He wants to be a playoff team, which would imply being in the top 6 and not having to worry about the play-in. But he said, like, once that is settled, then he will worry about the seeding. I also think that's what you're going to say publicly. Like I've been saying, I think the Lakers should try to be the best seed possible, be it 2 seed, 3 seed, but whatever. It seems like 2 seed is the most is the best realistic outcome. Like they're not going to catch OKC. There's too big of a gap there. So they're in this 2 to 5 battle with Denver and Memphis and Houston. And I think, to your point, it is better to be the 2 or 3 seed. You stay away from OKC. You potentially have OKC and Denver just fight it out on the other side of the bracket. And if you're the 3 seed, you're not going to have home court, most likely in the second round. But I think the Lakers have, like, I would pick them against Memphis or Houston, regardless of who they're facing, even if they don't have home court. So I think the ideal outcome is some form of playing Houston or Memphis in round 2. Ideally, the Lakers are the 2 seed, and then Memphis or Houston is the 3 seed. But I think whether it's 2 or 3, like being on that side of the bracket, but in general, I just think like you don't try to game the matchup. You don't try to tempt the basketball gods or disrespect the basketball gods. Like I do believe in the basketball gods, and I think we've seen teams try to manipulate it, and it often doesn't work out. It sometimes does, but it feels like it's like 2 or 3 out of 10 times it works out. The other 7, 8 times it doesn't. And I just think you try to win every game you can. You try to get the best seed possible, and then the bracket plays out the way the bracket plays out. Ty Burdett, thank you for the super chat. Can this team hang with the Thunder come playoffs? It's a good question. I think they can. I know this is not a popular opinion for some Laker fans. Like I do think as of right now, I would still lean OKC. I think they've just had an incredible regular season. I do think there's an element of like them probably coming back down to earth a little bit, and there's still like a let's see it dynamic with them. But I just think they're a really, really good team on both sides of the ball. And like, I think they have fewer holes or flaws than the Lakers currently do. I like their top 7, 8, whatever, a little bit more, but we're not going to see them play the Thunder until the end of the season. So at that point, we'll have a better idea of like how the Lakers fared over this next month, which is going to be really challenging. They got that tough road trip. They got that 6 games and 8-day stretch. They play Boston. They play the Knicks. They play Memphis. They play Denver a couple more times. They got a tough schedule over the next month. And that'll give us, again, just more of a sample size on like where the Lakers are at. And then eventually in early April, they will play OKC twice in OKC. And that won't be determining the 1-2 seeding, but it could be determining the 2 seed. And those will be some big games for the Lakers in terms of like a measuring stick and also potentially where they're going to fall in the West standings. So I think they can hang with the Thunder. I would lean OKC, but I'm also open to changing my mind based on how those matchups go later in the season and how the next month goes. Like if the Lakers, they keep winning every 18 out of 22 games or even like 15 out of 20 or whatever, like we're maybe having a different conversation. But they also got to stay healthy. We got to see what happens with Austin and Rui. And like I think They won tonight, but those are two big pieces that I don't think they can be afford to be without longer term. So a lot of the season is left in terms of just kind of seeing what this group really is down the stretch. But I also think Luka is going to look better. The offense should be better. So yeah, I do think they can hang with the Thunder. But for now, I would make the Thunder. I would favor the Thunder in a hypothetical series. Fang Charlie, thank you for the super chat. Yo, Jovan, what's going on with you and your bod, man? Get yourself some rest and hope you're well. When you have time, I'd appreciate a reply to my mail. LOL. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know. I feel like I get sick multiple times a season, and I haven't been sick in like almost 2 months. So I felt like I was kind of overdue. And also sometimes it depends on like what's happening in the locker room. But yeah, I'm gonna try and get some rest a little bit later tonight. But appreciate it, and I do owe you a reply. Ray, when will we get the Luka handshake? Ask them, please. Thank you for the super chat. It's a good. I think that happens organically. I don't think it's something you could force, but I think we will get it soon. LeBron loves big handshake guy. And also one thing I've made this observation with Luka before, but Luka's a big high five guy. And there's been those studies about the teams that are like the best teams are constantly high fiving, touching each other. And like that is like a sign of camaraderie and just like support and encouragement. And I've noticed that Luka has been doing that, and it's like a teammate scores, he runs up, high fives them, or even if they miss, like he sets them up for a look and they miss it, he'll go over and high five them. Like he just, I think he's really good with that in terms of like morale and just like giving his teammates confidence and reassurance. Samuel, thank you for the super chat. What are the chances the Lakers hold on to the 2 seed? I'm going to pull up Tankathon here and see remaining strength of schedule. So remaining strength of schedule, Lakers have the 3rd toughest schedule remaining. Denver has the 4th. Then Houston is at 18th and Memphis is at 10th. So based on that, it would seem like one of the 3 teams would theoretically have a decent shot to at least pass them and drop them to number 3. But when you factor in the way that they're playing, I think that they have a legitimate shot. Like I as of now, I would make them the favorite among that field. I know technically Houston has the easiest remaining schedule by like a decent margin, but the Lakers are playing incredible right now. So I mean, it's tough to say. Like, I think if we're gonna just type it, like, so there's 4 outcomes realistically for the Lakers: 2, 3, 4, 5. If we start at like 25, 25, 25, 25 in terms of percentage, I would maybe still put it at like 30, 35%, and then maybe let's say 35% 2 seed, 30% 3 seed, 20% 4 seed, and like 15% 5 seed. I think that's kind of like how I tentatively break it down. PNG, yo, heard Mannix saying we're a 1st round exit. I'm actually recording with Mannix tomorrow morning. I'm doing his podcast on Sports Illustrated. So I'm sure we will get into it and disagree a bit, because I don't see any way to. I mean, okay, let me walk it back. There's always a chance you lose in the 1st round, but based on really the only way I could see the Lakers losing in the 1st round is like they drop to 5, Denver gets the 4 seed, and they lose to Denver. Like that's really it. But I don't think they're going to be the 5 seed. I think they're probably going to be 2 or 3, and then you're playing Minnesota or the Clippers or maybe the Warriors. I think that would be a tough series, but I think they're going to at least make the 2nd round. And then at that point, there's a lot of factors that go into like if you advance, but I think they're at least a 2nd round team, if not further. Primo says, yo, Jovan, what's your road trip win-loss prediction? Let's see. This is a really tough trip. This is probably the toughest trip of the season, to be honest, because you got at Boston, primetime Saturday game, at Brooklyn. I think that's a win. But then you got at Milwaukee, at Denver, back to back. So I will say, I'll say 2-2. And part of that is just because I also don't know about like that. Like I'm as of now, I'm going to assume that Rui's going to miss the Boston game. And I think that's like a huge game for him to miss. I think he's really important for that matchup. And we don't even know if Austin's going to be available for that game. So I think the Boston one, it might just be like, I mean, they're a really good team. They're a really good home team. They're going to be trying to get their lick back after losing to the Lakers. So I think like they're going to be motivated. It's a big game. But I also think like the Lakers just might just be shorthanded physically in that game with like Austin having his calf strain situation. Remember, I mean, Luka missed almost 7 weeks with a calf strain, 2 different calf strains. So it's like different situations, but it's like you can aggravate a calf strain relatively easily. And so Lakers got to be careful with how they manage Austin. Then Rui again is out until at least Friday. If not, I think probably a little bit longer. So I think just from like a shorthanded perspective that they might be too shorthanded for that Boston matchup. Then I think they'll beat Brooklyn. I think they'll beat Milwaukee. And then I think at Denver, second night of a back-to-back is pretty tough, especially going Milwaukee to Denver. At least you're going back west, but I think they probably go 2-2. But look, I mean, the way they're playing, they might go 3-1 or 4-0. So maybe I know nothing. Rolla, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, before the trade, AD was expected to score. Plus D versus Luka is expected mostly to score, and the team defends. Plus, we're a lot faster now, 18-5 to finish. I think it's certainly possible. I think again, the Rui and Austin situations, I think could catch up to the Lakers at some point, just because I think those two guys are really important, and there is no one that could do what those two guys can do. There's not, like, obviously LeBron and Luka can just do more, but like put those two guys aside in terms of like the supporting cast. There's not another playmaker, shot creator in the same stratosphere as Austin, in the same universe as Austin. And then there's none of the forwards can do, like, DFS can get hot from 3, but he's not going to have the cutting and the finishing the way that Rui can. Vando obviously can have a big impact with the offensive rebounds, but like we saw, they were just not guarding him. He was missing open jumpers. And that's like, those guys can still help offensively. I'm not saying they can't, but I think from like a firepower perspective, I think you're going to need firepower for the Boston game. I don't think if the Lakers score 108, I could be wrong, but I think if they score 108 points against Boston, they probably lose that game. That's probably a game you have to score 120, 125 points. I think Denver, second night of a back-to-back, I don't know their schedule, if they're going to be rested or whatnot, but like they're probably going to approach this Lakers game much differently than they did the last one. And like, they're going to be trying to figure out the best way to attack them. And again, just that's a brutal back-to-back at Milwaukee, at Denver. So I think 18-5 is possible. I'm not saying it's not. I would probably lean more like 16-7, something like that. But I think 18-5, that's probably on the higher end of realistic outcomes, partly just factoring in like strength of schedule, how brutal the next month is. But again, look, I didn't think they'd go 18-4 over these 22. So certainly could happen. Sarah, any update on Maxey? He hasn't been on the bench. I said last stream that I've heard that there is some optimism that Maxey could be returning before the end of the regular season. That's the latest I've heard. He hasn't been on the bench because he's in a boot. So it's just like not an ideal situation to be lugging around. So I think my understanding is he's just been like at the facility working out, training to doing as much as he physically can, and that's kind of been it. So I don't. Well, when guys have like lower, I mean, there are still guys who will be with the bench or whatnot, but I think for him, with it being a broken foot or surgery post broken foot, I think it's probably means that, like, as someone who I've torn my Achilles and I've broken my foot. You got to elevate a lot, and I don't think like sitting on an NBA bench is like necessarily the best thing for his recovery. Darren says, we're all Lakers here, I know, but how much of a hoophead are you? How much of the NBA outside of the Lakers do you keep up with? I try to keep up with as much as I can. I'm not, like, a night like tonight, I'm not able to watch other games because I'm getting to the arena at, I mean, tonight was an early one because of the 6:30 start, but I'm getting there at like 4, and then I'm there till tonight was there until like a bit after 9. But typically I'm there till like 11:30. So it is hard on, and then like tomorrow it's like, okay, I'm doing the Mannix pod, then I've got a meeting, then I have my podcast that I'm doing. And like, so it is hard to keep up with a lot of the league, but I'm try to watch as much as I can. And I think you guys have seen on like vlogs, I'll be watching games on planes and stuff when I'm traveling, but it is hard with this job to, like, I have to be so into all the nitty gritty with the Lakers that like it can kind of prevent me from watch. But if it's a big game or sometimes pregame, if there's a game on in the media room, I'll watch something. Like I was watching some of Cleveland Boston the other night, but it is tough with the schedule. Alex ordered my Luka jersey. LOL. That's awesome. I think the number 77, it's like it's a really unique number, of course, and I think those jerseys look dope. So I'm sure you'll get a lot of use out of that one. RGN Cal 4, Lakers are looking great. 2 seed with injuries, scary. Yeah, I mean, again, and I said at the top, like, they've continued to win despite whatever adversity is thrown at them, and I don't see any reason why that shouldn't continue. So, I don't think they're going to win every game the rest of the way, but hey, I mean, maybe they do go 18-5 or whatever down the stretch. Kane Carter on the LAD pod. What do you mean by Lamar owning bad games? I think you're referencing when I did the LAD pod with Lamar, like, last season, I want to say. I think I'm not quite sure what you're meaning here, but I think my point was like, and what I was saying to Lamar, and he was agreeing to my recollection, was like, I like personally, like, I just like when players own when they're not playing well, and that I think we were kind of talking about the newer generation, and sometimes that, like, they can be a little bit more sensitive to criticism, and like they try to be almost insulated from it, and don't want to own when they don't play well. And I think that the example I made was like, if back in the day, like, Lamar had a bad game, like, I don't think he was going to be like sensitive if someone said, hey, you didn't play like your best game tonight, or you struck, like, you had 5 turnovers tonight, you went 3 for 11 tonight, like, whatever it was. I just feel like at some point we've kind of shifted to it being a little bit more like that. I feel like today's players are it's not everybody, but it does feel like in general there's a little bit more of a sensitivity in terms of criticism, and really not owning their mistakes sometimes. And I think it was more just like a general commentary on the state of things, but I think that is what I was getting to. Honcho, thank you for the super chat. In my opinion, there aren't any other roster in NBA history with 2 all-time playmakers as talented as Doncic. Is that enough to win the chip with no C? I agree with you. I made a similar point. I think really the only other pairing that gets close is the Rockets with James Harden and Chris Paul. But even then, I also made the point that I think collectively Luka and LeBron are at a different level in terms of playmakers, and their biggest advantage is literally their size, and Luka being 6'7", 6'8", LeBron being 6'9", compared to Harden, who's 6'5", Chris Paul barely 6 foot. And that size matters in the playoffs. We've seen, I covered it back in the day when he was with the Clippers. Like, you can throw a wing defender on Chris Paul, and if you have a 6'7" guy who can hang with him, that guy can bother him a little bit. And it doesn't mean Chris isn't going to get his. He's not going to get his numbers, but you can disrupt him a little bit just because of the size. And then we know James Harden and his playoff, let's say, shortcomings throughout the years. Whereas Luka and LeBron are both guys who their numbers get better in the playoffs, and it's just much harder to contain those guys because of their size and like their strength as well. Like Luka, you can't just put a big wing defender on him. He can back that player down. He can get that player on his hip, and he has a certain level of strength. Of course, LeBron is. We've never seen a player with that combination of strength and athleticism, etc. So, or at that size. But so, yeah, I think from a talent perspective, in terms of playmaking, I don't think we've ever seen a combination this talented. In terms of, is it enough to win the chip? I do think so. I think that there are some things they have to navigate. And even I think it was kind of interesting to me that, like, in both games against the Clippers, they went with Trey Jemison in some key stretches and not Jackson Hayes. And it does feel like once Jackson hits like that mid-20s point, JJ isn't really comfortable playing him more. Like, they were closing with Trey tonight, and then they ultimately went small once they did the hack of Jemison, which is pretty funny later the fourth. But yeah, I think it is enough to win without like a quote unquote like starting center. J Note, thank you for the super chat. Non-Lakers related, but where do you think KD is traded this offseason? And again, going to be at the game on Tuesday. Would be dope to meet you, bro. Yeah, I just send me a DM on IG. That's probably the best way to set that up. In terms of where KD is traded, I don't know, because the latest reporting was like a contender, and I'm like, which contender is like trading for KD? Like, I don't think it's Boston. I don't think it's Cleveland. Like, the Knicks had interest in him before? Do they circle the block? And I don't even know what that looks like. They sent Bridges back and like something else. Otherwise, there's not really another contender like Milwaukee, but I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So it's like maybe the Knicks. And then I don't see OKC. I mean, OKC would be poetic, like, to the reunion. The Lakers like don't have the salary to do it. Denver is an interesting one, I guess, if it's like MPJ plus something else. Memphis, though, we saw Jimmy didn't want to go there. Houston has the assets. Clippers, Warriors. I mean, he didn't want to go to the Warriors. So it's like, I don't know. Is it the Thunder? Is it the Nuggets? Is it the Grizzlies, Rockets, Knicks? Like, those are, I guess, like the teams off the top of my head that could make some sense based on their assets, based on their contracts, based on their status. I don't know. That's a tough one. Lee Baggy, thank you for the super chat. Lakers are the type of team to beat Boston and Knicks, but lose to the Pelicans. Certainly possible. And to your point, like, if you look at their schedule, they've tended to lose more recently. They've tended to lose to bad teams and then beat the good teams. So I would not rule that out. If you want my prediction on this week, I think they beat the Pelicans and the Knicks and lose to the Celtics. I think they go 2-1. That would be my prediction. Primo, thank you for super chat. Which assistant coach is in charge of the defense? Nate McMillan is the one primarily in charge of the defense. Obviously, JJ has a say as well, but Nate is more the defensive coordinator, and Greg St. Jean is more the offensive coordinator. Mint Millions, JJ a better coach than Ham? Yes, and I thought that long before the season, but it has been confirmed. I think you could add much in front of better, and that would be accurate. I think you could maybe even add a second much. I think you could say JJ is a much, much better coach than Ham. Bowen, Thank you for the super chat. Jovan, I listen to pretty much every stream we do. You look super tired. I hope you get some rest and take it easy. Thank you. I appreciate what you guys show empathy and compassion for me. I am tired. I'm more so just sick. I've been super, I could barely get out of bed the last couple days and super like stuff. I don't know if it's like a sinus thing. I typically don't have sinus issues, but I feel like more recently it's felt like I've kind of had them. So maybe I'm starting to get them, but yeah, I'm struggling, but I'm going to go about 10 more minutes and then I will wrap. Zach, Clippers seem to double Luka. Thank you for the super chat. Clippers seem to double Luka and LeBron a lot tonight. That's where we miss AR the most. It feels like teams can't double with him on the floor, really. Though, so I think that they double less, but I don't think they don't double at all. And like that's been I think that's arguably been the biggest advantage to having Luka, and JJ talked about this tonight, is like when you have Luka, teams guard him a certain way. And because of the way that they guard, like you cannot drop against Luka. You have to either blitz or play up to the level or double. And when teams are defending a bit more aggressively against Luka, that opens up then whoever's the roll man, especially if it's a perimeter player. Now you have that player in the short roll, and that creates a ripple effect through the rest of your offense. So I think Luka, I think, is going to come around and be back to being the 30 plus, 8-9 assists plus guy, 45+% shooting like every night. And I think we're getting close to that player. But I think arguably the biggest impact he has just in general is like the way teams sell out to try and stop him and like in fear of him has this ripple effect through the rest of the offense that really just generates high percentage looks and a lot of easy baskets. But to your point, I do think there's more of that with AR off the court. And I think like some of these lineups that the Lakers threw out, like, there was one, I think, to start. I think it was like Shake, Dalton, Jemison, Vando, and LeBron. And it's like outside of Dalton, who even teams I feel like have become a little less afraid of recently with his shooting ups and downs. Outside of him, like the other three guys you can play off of and ignore outside of a certain range. So like, I think LeBron especially is kind of dealt with the brunt of not being in good lineups, but even with Luka and like some of the lineups he was in, like, it's just like they don't have the shooting and the scoring to supplement it. So you can sell out more against a Luka or LeBron. And I think that's partly why those guys combined for 14 turnovers. So I agree. Like, I agree with your premise here. I still think though teams are going to just double Luka because that's just how you defend him. But yeah, it certainly makes an impact. Shibugan, thank you for the super chat. They didn't cut anyone from the roster ahead of the deadline. Do you think they're changing plans on Goodwin / Jemison or just cutting later? I think they're going to just cut later, and it's kind of, it's the most prudent thing to do in a couple of ways. So one, maybe you get so many injuries that like you need a Cam Reddish, and if you just cut him and don't have him, you're kind of in a tough position. So I think while you could like flip it and say it's the nice thing to do to let him out of his contract, let him play for a playoff team potentially, I think from the Lakers side, it's like you're going for something here and you need as many resources and players as possible. So like you can have Reddish on the roster and Goodwin still on a two-way, and then like prioritize Goodwin. But if you have so many injuries up to a point, like then you will need Reddish. Whereas, I mean, technically they can put Goodwin on the like they could cut Reddish, put Goodwin on the roster, upgrade Quincy Oliveri back to a two-way or Stanley Johnson to a two-way. So like they can technically replace, and maybe that you could argue is like the better path, because I think you could argue that Quincy Oliveri or Stanley Johnson theoretically should be able to contribute more than Cam Reddish. And it just like Cam Reddish has not played since January 28th. He hasn't played in over a month. That includes like doesn't play in garbage time. Obviously was traded briefly to Charlotte and then came back, and had the birth of his daughter. But like he's been back for going on over 2 weeks now, and the Lakers just don't play him. So to kind of bring it full circle, I don't think the plans have changed. I think they're still evaluating things, but I do expect, as things currently stand, Goodwin to be the guy that gets on the roster. Reddish is cut, and it just happens deep in the season, and then Reddish is not playoff eligible. RGN Cal 4, would you compare this team to CP3 Harden Rockets? I think there are similarities. I get that comparison. I made that comparison earlier on in the Luka era. Like, a couple differences here. Like, this team actually does play some bigs. Like, I think Jackson would have fit well with that Houston team, but that team literally went centerless with PJ Tucker, Robert Covington, Ariza. Like, they went really small. And I would even say, like, looking at those types of guys, they are similar to the Rui, DFS, Vando types, but I would say I think the Lakers are even like a little bit more equipped to play small ball or centerless ball with the current group. Though again, I think in general, they're similar. Like, PJ Tucker was a bolder. Robert Covington was a underrated rim protector for like a wing. Ariza, obviously, we know his resume and pedigree, but I think that the Lakers actually have, especially, like, I didn't even mention LeBron yet, and his ability to protect the rim, chase down blocks, all that stuff. Like, I think the Lakers actually have a bit more size with their wings and are better defensively with their wings. And as I mentioned a little bit ago, like, I think the Luka LeBron pairing certainly is better from a scoring perspective compared to CP3 Harden, but I would even say from a playmaking perspective. And I would say, like, those are two clear top 10, if not, I think LeBron's been right there as like a borderline top 5 guy. And I think Chris Paul was like James was winning MVPs or in the MVP conversation during this time, but like Chris was like right around the top 10. I think like clearly top 15, but probably could have made a case for him anywhere between like 8 to 13 at that point in the league, and probably closer to like 10 to 13. So I think overall, just like the production and where they ranked in the league, and then the size, I think the Lakers are a higher version of, or a better version of, the CP3 Harden Rockets. And it was also a different time because that group was shooting threes at a rate that, like, the Warriors could match, the Cavs, the LeBron Kyrie, or I guess Kyrie had left at that point. So it was like the LeBron Cavs of 2018, like they could match, but I think a little bit of a different time in the league, but I think this Lakers group is better. Mint Millions, thank you for the super chat. What does it feel like to look at and talk to LeBron James? It's awesome. And like, I've mentioned it before, but full disclosure, like, I grew up a LeBron fan. I had his shoes as a rookie. I had his jersey. I had like a little action figure guy. I like love LeBron growing up. So to be able to cover him, like, when he went to the Lakers at the time, I was covering the Clippers. So it was like, I was like, this is kind of, it's cool he's in LA. It's cool he's a Laker, but like, I'm not covering it. And then after his first 2 seasons, I switched over and covered the Lakers. So it's definitely one of the highlights of my career for sure. I think when I'm hopefully 80 years old, looking back on my career, maybe I'll still be live streaming with you guys. I think I'll be able to say, like, I covered LeBron, who is one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT, in my opinion, is the GOAT. But like, I think it's really cool. So I don't take that for granted. Uida boy, thank you for the super chat. Eat a tablespoon of wasabi; it will help clear the sinus. Do you guys want me to do that on live right now? That would be funny. You would just see me crash out. But thank you, I appreciate it. I've been taking some Dayquil, but it hasn't really been helping. So maybe I will. I don't. One issue is I don't have wasabi here, but I can go get some. Arno A, thank you for the super chat. Why Reddish, Cut Morris? You might need Cam. So I've made this point before, but Morris is beloved by Luka and LeBron. he is viewed as a veteran voice and leader in the locker room. He's basically their version of Udonis Haslem. So just from a political standpoint, I don't see them cutting Morris. Like, his locker is right next to LeBron's. I know that sounds like a small thing, but that's not a small thing. Like, he got AD's old locker. That's not a small thing. So I don't see Morris getting cut. We could debate. Like, I agree with you that Reddish is better than Morris, and that if the Lakers really needed to rely on one of the two, I'd rather rely on Reddish. However, I think I think the back end of the roster when fully healthy is probably like Bronny 15, Morris 14, Reddish 13. And I think the Lakers are basically saying, like, we really hope we're not in a scenario where we rely on the bottom three guys. So might as well bring in, like, Goodwin replacing Reddish jumps into like 9 or 10, which I think then pushes back. I don't even know who dropped. Like, I guess Shake would be then like the number 13 guy. So I understand why you're saying that, but they're not cutting Morris. Zepharin, thank you for the super chat. Yo, Jovan, good to see you at the arena tonight. Always nice to have an earlier game. Let's hope the Lakers keep rolling Tuesday. Stay safe. Thanks, man. It was good to see you as well. And yeah, I think Tuesday should be another one that they get and make it 7 straight and then 19 to 23. Mitch Potter, thank you for the super chat. 1,000th career win for LeBron tonight, 4th all time. I did not know that. That is a good stat. So what's funny is I pre-wrote, I'm doing like a timeline for The Athletic on the big milestones of LeBron's career. So like first basket, 10,000th point, 20,000th point, 30,000, 40,000. When he passed Jordan for all-time playoff leading scorer, when he passed Kareem, of course, and then now the 50,000th career point. And so I was going through all the different games and what he did it and what the opponent was, what the score was, what the context of the evening was, finding quotes. And I did all this stuff. And then at the end, I was like, he did get to 18. So that story will be going up after the next game. But yeah, I mean, dude's a winner. Mint Millions asks, so you're not a Lakers fan. So I've tried to explain this before, but I get there's a little bit of confusion or so I grew up a Lakers fan. I made a decision when I pursued journalism, when I wanted to become an NBA reporter, when I wanted to become an NBA analyst, that I was going to kill my fandom. So that meant killing my fandom as a Laker fan, killing my fandom of LeBron. And like, it was just, if I'm going to be in these locker rooms and talking to these players, I don't want to fan out. There are people who do that, and I tip my cap, and like, everyone has their own style. Like, arguably one of the most successful and famous people in the business is Bill Simmons, who we all know is a giant Boston and Celtics fan. And it's a little bit different because he's never really positioned himself as like a journalist or a reporter, but still one of the most successful people in sports media, has built his empire off of being a fan. So it's certainly possible. But one of the people I really looked up to coming into this was Zach Lowe. And Zach Lowe talked about a similar thing with him. And he grew up a Celtics fan. And once he got into the business, he really had to kill that and just be like, I'm going to do this job objectively. So for me, like, sure, on some level, there will always be the little kid in me who was a Lakers fan who, I mean, even until my high school days, like, basically it was I went to college in the summer of 2010, and that was when the Lakers obviously won the second title against Boston. So that was like my last time really rooting. What was that? And then a little bit my freshman year, but that's when I kind of broke into the industry. So then I started to kind of shift away from that. So I know it's kind of a weird thing for some people to grasp, but for me, it was just like, I don't want to be in the locker room fanning out over Kobe again. Like, there are some people who do that. Like, I would argue it depends on like what lane you're trying to be in, but as a reporter, it kind of goes against the ethos of the job to be a fan of a team and to be rooting for something. like then you're more of maybe like a content creator or maybe an analyst. Like there are different lanes or whatever. But if you are a reporter, if you are reporting on news, asking questions in these press conferences, like I didn't want to be like a fan because I think it compromises your ability to be objective. And one thing I've always tried to do is like call it like it is, the good and the bad. And I don't want to be like, if someone plays poorly, I'm going to say it. And it's not about like, me being super optimistic or wearing purple colored lenses or whatever. So I get why that's kind of complicated for some people, but for me, it was more of just like what the best way to do the job is to be an objective journalist and reporter and analyst. And that's the way I've operated. So for sure, like, I mean, I've said this before, like it is better for me when the Lakers do well. There's obviously more interest. The numbers on the stream are better. The numbers on my stories are better. Like the Lakers having a good season is better. So certainly I'm not like upset when they're doing well, right? But it is like a thing where I had to make that decision of like, if I'm going to do this, I want to be as objective as I possibly can. And I'm human. I make mistakes. I have my own biases. I'm sure you guys have picked up on some of them, but I've tried to kind of do the job the right way. And part of doing the job is not being a fan. Braden, hey, Brate, solid win tonight. Is the next game against the Pels a trap game in your opinion? So proud of this team in parentheses. I guess like, and thank you for the super chat. Like, we've seen it a little bit with them with some of these recent losses to bad teams that like, I think they can maybe underestimate them a little bit, but I think this team is in such a groove right now that like, especially getting to the number 2 seed, that I think they're locked in. So I'm not saying they're going to have like their best performance of the season necessarily against the Pelicans, but I don't think they're going to overlook them. BLC says, you're a true professional, Jovan. Cheers to more Laker wins and a title. Thank you. And look, if Lakers win the title, I'm not going to be complaining. I'm not going to be like that. That would be, and again, I think on some level, I think on some level there will always be a Laker fan in me somewhere. I just like for me to do this job and analyze the team and talk to these guys. Like again, I can't be like fanning out about the team, about them. Like that just kind of compromises you as a journalist. So, that's the best way I can answer that. Who would you like to see the Lakers face in the first round of the playoffs? I said this last stream. I said I think the Clippers for a couple reasons. Like one, we just haven't seen Lakers Clippers yet. I think it would be fun to finally have that series. Two, selfishly, I would not have to travel, or I guess I would have to go from downtown to Inglewood, and that would be nice to kind of get just an all LA playoff series. But I think from a narrative storyline perspective, it would be really fun to just have those two teams face off finally. So I mean, Golden State would be fun with the Jimmy, like San Francisco's not too far. I always think about the travel to like, if you're asking me what I want, I always factor in the travel and just like the city and how that goes. But like Steph, LeBron is always must see TV. I think Jimmy adds a different element to that. You also have Luka adding a different element to that. So like these teams have not faced each other yet with those iterations of the two teams. Minnesota with Ant and like the size versus the small ball or centerless ball, like that's kind of an interesting chess match. Phoenix and Sacramento, I like it'd be easier for the Lakers, but I don't even see those teams getting into that. Like it's basically like who could be the 6 or 7 seed. So I think it's Golden State, the Clippers, and the Timberwolves probably. Like I think those are the 3 contenders. Otherwise, it could also be Memphis or Houston. But I think that like the fun thing in the West is like I think all those series are good series. Like I don't really see any of those going like. I think they all go at least 5, if not maybe 6. So I think those would all be fun first round series. King Carter, what do you think about Chuck's comments on the Lakers? I don't know what he said, but let's I think we know how he feels about the Lakers. I'll leave that there. Otiz, Jovan, you think AD was lazy and or clogged the paint? Lakers are so fast now. I don't think he was lazy. I think he did kind of clog the paint. Like I think there was we saw this sometimes when AD would miss a game, the offense would be at a certain pace or the ball movement or whatever. So I think we've seen more of that now. But I think I don't want to disrespect AD or take away what he contributed, because I thought for until more recently, I thought he was basically the Lakers' best player for the first 2 months of the season. So I don't want to dismiss that. But from a stylistic perspective, I think the Lakers have really leaned into this current identity, and it makes a bit more sense with the current roster. And of course, you could have AD instead of Jackson Hayes. I think you would do that, right? But it's they have a bunch of speed and athleticism, and it just kind of all fits with that identity. Kane Carter, thank you for the super chat. What do you think of Lob City / CP overall, as well as Blake? Obviously a disappointing run. I think they had the talent to at least make the conference finals. I covered parts of that, and I know that there was plenty of times they beat the best teams in the league, and you'd see that potential, and then it just never materialized in the playoffs. I think Chris is, he's up there in terms of Stockton and Kidd and Nash and all the assist and steal stuff. I think he's one of the greatest point guards of all time. It's just kind of unfortunate. I think if we were doing Chris Paul's career 100 times, this is probably in the 35th, 40th percentile. I think there are a lot of scenarios in which he has he wins an MVP, he wins a title. I think he was that caliber of player. Blake, it just kind of came down to the injuries and his game ultimately not aging the best, though. I think he had a productive transition to being a role player, and I'm excited to see what he's like as an analyst and commentator. But there was a stretch there where I think he finished, his peak was third in MVP. So I think it was 2015, and that version of him was a beast. And that was when they beat the Spurs in round one, blew the 3-1 lead against the Rockets. But that version of Blake was a monster. And I think the thing with him that everyone always focused on the dunks and the athleticism, but to me, he was such a skilled ball handler and passer for his size. And you saw that a little bit later in his career, 4 or 5 assists a night. But it's to me, it's one of the what ifs of the 2010s is it does feel like the Lob City teams, similar to my point about Chris, if you were doing that 100 times, it feels like this was probably a 15th or 20th percentile outcome for them. It feels like they really underachieved. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. Honestly, let them have Denver round 1, get them out of the way early, monkey off the back. We can gauge their needs better if they struggle versus them. The one thing with Denver round 1 is that it's almost certainly has to come in the 4-5 matchup. So I just think it's better for the Lakers to be at the in the 2-3 side, because then you're also playing OKC in round 2. And again, I get some people just say, hey, play the best teams right away and just see where you stack up, get it over with. If that's how it plays out, that's how it plays out. But if you're saying 2-7 LA Denver, sure, 3-6 LA Denver, sure, but it does seem again that 2 to 5 group is likely going to remain in the 2 to 5 group, and the 6 to 10 group is likely going to remain in the 6 to 10 group. So the one issue with playing Denver is that would put LA in the 4-5. And again, if we're picking where they should be, I would still say 2 or 3 is better. But if they play Denver, they play Denver, and that's look, I think it's a much better matchup for them. Mitch Potter, thank you for the super chat. Can we expect more vlogs on the road trips? Love those. Yes. I actually I did a vlog for the Dallas Luka game, but it just ended up like not really. I didn't get like great stuff, and I felt like I didn't really have enough time to put it together. And then I was considering doing one tonight, but then I didn't feel great. So maybe I'll do one. Maybe I do a Tuesday, Thursday vlog of New Orleans, New York, right before the road trip, and then I'm for sure doing one off of this road trip. So yes, I will be doing more vlogs, and I also said previously that like they had not really performed well, and the last couple ones have performed pretty well, especially in comparison to the earlier ones. So that also gives me a little bit more like it's nice to see people interested in it. So yes, I will be doing more vlogs. All right. I'm gonna wrap in a couple minutes. Seeing some vlog comments. Kevin Cambridge, how realistic is it that we hold on to the 2 seed? I think it's realistic. I think that the one issue, there's two things going against them right now. It's just strength of schedule. They have the toughest remaining schedule among those 4 teams battling for the 2 seed. And then also these Austin and Rui injuries. We'll see how that plays out. But with the way they're playing, hasn't really mattered who they've been missing. And I think they're in such a good zone right now that 2 seed is definitely realistic. For Ifu, Jovan, I got tickets to the Lakers versus Bulls in Chicago. Hope I could see you there. Again, if you guys want to meet, good to know. If you guys want to meet up with me, I think shooting me a DM on Instagram is probably the most effective way. That's how I've met up with a couple people at games, and that's probably like the quickest way to get my attention. Natalia Buha, I remember I saw a picture of you in SGA before he was in his prime. Did you think he was going to be this good? Clippers made that big trade. Yeah, so I actually, that was from SGA's rookie year. I was covering the Clippers then. I had lunch with him, and I did not think he was going to be this good. What I quickly realized that he was good, and it was kind of like almost like a Max Christie, Austin Reeves type thing, where he was battling like Pat Beverly and Avery Bradley, and they needed their defense, but it was clear like this dude's like too skilled and too talented to like not be playing more. So I was like, I've always kind of had a thing where like I clamor for the players I think should be playing more. And at the time, I remember saying like Shea should be playing more than Pat Beverly or more than Avery Bradley. And a lot of times it was like those guys were all in the mid to high 20s, and I was like, this dude should be playing like mid 30s. He's that good right now. And it eventually got that way later in the season. And like by the playoffs against the Warriors, he was playing a lot. It looked pretty good. I did not see this. I thought maybe all-star potential, but like more of, I'm trying to think like who would be like, but like kind of back end all-star potential. Like you kind of know the difference, right? Like there's the guys who are like maybe 20th to 24th in like the all-star pecking order. Then there's obviously the guys who are like top 5, top 10. I didn't see this. I'm not going to lie and say I did. I did not see him being the MVP favorite. I don't think anyone did. I think if the Clippers did, I don't think they would have traded him. But obviously, that trade has aged very poorly. It's a clan. Thank you for the super chat. Don't know if you answer this. Which seed is best? In my opinion, 2 seeds the best because you have home court till at least the conference finals, assuming you make it. And so I think you take the best seed possible. And you also got, in theory, the easier first round opponent. And yeah, so I believe in going for the best seed possible. I don't think you try to game the standings. Like there's a lot of risk in that. And you don't want to give teams unnecessary motivation. I don't believe in like throwing games and all that stuff. I think a lot of teams have tried it and it just has not worked out. And I think that's the wrong move. So I think you try to get the best seed possible, win as many games as possible, and then you let the chips fall wherever they go. JC says when Luka becomes 100%, I believe we are better than all three teams, but I'm biased. It's certainly possible. Look, I think the Lakers could win the title. So by virtue of that, I am saying I think they could beat Boston, OKC, and Cleveland. I just think we have a like those teams have been basically playing at this level that the Lakers have been playing at all season. So I think like I would like to see more, but assuming the Lakers continue to play like this the rest of the way, they're going to be in that conversation. So I think, you know, I don't think you're like crazy for thinking that. Kevin Cambridge says, who'd you pair with Luka post LeBron? I think you just get the best. I would say ideally like a wing or a big. I think a guard is probably like the one thing you don't necessarily need, but it's tough to say. I mean, could you get Giannis? Could you get Wemby? Like, you know, Jokic? Like, I think of like I think it's clear who the top guys are. I'm trying to think. I would also say like ideally that player is more of a defensive guy. Like for example, Şengün. I think I like the Şengün Luka fit offensively, but I think defensively that's problematic. So it depends on like the player. But I would say ideally a defensive a star who's a wing or a big who also has some defensive chops. That would be my preference. Natalia says, Buha, do you agree with me? I'd rather face Boston than the Cavs. It's close for me. I tend to default to like, I think sometimes we do that. Like, and I'm not putting this on you. I just think sometimes it like go back to previous conversation we were having about the Rockets. And it was like, and look, Chris Paul gets injured. If he doesn't get injured, maybe they win that series. They don't miss 25 straight threes. They potentially win that series, but they didn't. And I think there was an element of like in the regular season, I think a lot of people were saying Houston might be better than Golden State. Houston might be able to beat Golden State. Like this team was designed to beat them. And at the end of the day, even with Golden State, like they had the first year with KD, they were incredible in the regular season. Then they took a little bit step back that second year, but then obviously still won the title. I kind of think Boston, they haven't had the most inspiring title defense, right? But I just think when it comes down to it, I would pick Boston over Cleveland. Now, I guess in relation to the Lakers, I think the Lakers match up better with Boston. However, because Cleveland's got the two bigs in Mobley and Allen, and I think DeAndre Hunter brings a different element to the front court. I also think, though, that the Lakers kind of like going up against two small guards is potentially advantageous to them compared to just like a bunch of wings with Boston. But I guess you could make the case Cleveland is a harder matchup, but I think Boston's better. And I think a lot of people, my kind of read on it is I think a lot of people just don't like Boston, and I get it. Trust me, I get it. I don't think that should cloud like how people view them as a team. And they were a really dominant playoff team last year. And they basically have the same group. And I know they haven't been as good in the regular season, but as of now, I would pick Boston over Cleveland in a 7-game series. So, but like, it's like, I think Boston's better, but maybe Cleveland's a tougher matchup for the Lakers, if that makes sense. But like, at the same time, I think you could argue that the better team is the tougher matchup. So I mean, ideally you don't face either of them in the finals, but yeah, it's probably a toss up, I guess. Barry says we Laker fans hate Boston. Look, I get it. I'm just trying to. I don't think it's just Laker fans. I think a lot of people hate Boston. I just think it shouldn't cloud like I think because of that, some people are overlooking or underrating how good they are. That's more so my point. But I get hating Boston because I think I'll say this: the Laker fandom, like getting over some of that stuff was easier than getting over the Boston hate. I think the Boston hate for me, that ran deep. The Art of War, Jovan, do you think the Lakers should go 23-0 the rest of the season? Can they? Yes. Will they? I don't. I don't think that's going to happen. All right. I'm going to wrap here. I went surprise, I went 30 minutes over, but I'll be back tomorrow with a new episode of Buha's Block. I do need to try and get some rest tonight. Apologies for the mic issues at the beginning of the stream. Yeah, it was switched over to my camera mic, which I don't know if I've ever even used my camera mic, so that's why I was pretty bad. So I'll probably drop a note in the comments for those who are starting the stream at the beginning and hearing that. I might even cut that, but yeah, we'll see. But appreciate you all. I'm going to get some rest, and I will talk to you all very soon. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to like this video, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow going over Luka, LeBron, the Lakers, the defense, the young guys, all that stuff. So be on the lookout for that episode of Buha's Block, likely coming out in the early evening. And then I'll be back Tuesday after Lakers Pelicans. And then Wednesday, back with a state of the Lakers at the 60-game mark. 10 storylines at the 60-game mark. So be on the lookout for that episode as well. But I appreciate you all. Shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to all 1,500 plus of you rocking with me tonight. Everyone get some sleep. For those who it's nighttime for, get some sleep, get some rest. For those it's daytime, have a good day. And I will talk to you all very soon.